some traditions that I was brought up, I heard many times until I accepted Krishna consciousness, God, I am a jealous God. So that seems to be a paradox between two religious faiths.
Well, only if they're both true. In other words, you can have, then it's not a paradox unless both statements have to be true.
Okay.
Now, there can be a religious tradition in which God is really present. They're actually worshiping God, and they're even getting benefit by worshiping God. They're not worshiping the devil. It's not a false religion. They just got a few points a little out of focus. So there's a difference between saying that, okay, basically you have a genuine religion, God is really with you, and you're worshiping God, but I think you need to work on a few of these points here. You didn't get it all right.
So the God of the Bible says, I am a jealous God, and Christian Bhagavad Gita is saying, I am not a jealous God.
Well, I mean, when the God of the Old Testament says, I'm a jealous God, first of all, you've got to look at the original Hebrew word. You've got to see what that means in that context. I mean, I don't think people really thought God was like, I'm jealous. I think it's more like what God is saying is that it matters to me that you understand who is actually the source of your existence. That matters to me. So we have an English word, jealous. We don't have the Hebrew word in front of us. We don't know the literary context, and so on. So I think we have to be a little cautious with that one.
Okay. Oh, just for the sake of...
Sure. No problem. Yes, sure.
You used a lot of logic to explain spirituality, but how do we preach to people just by saying that our scriptures are self-evident? Because they're not going to take it. I think I
don't think.
What you mean,
Okay, yeah, good question. It's a good question. First of all, I might bring up that point in a public lecture, not because the person's going to feel compelled to join the Hare Krishna movement, but simply to show them that in pursuing this tradition, you are not acting irrational. And ultimately, of course, the person would have to have their own experience. It would have to be self-evident to that person. But sometimes what we're doing is clearing away a lot of false ideas which are perpetrated by pseudo-intellectuals in our culture. I'd like to give you an example. We have a very well-known term in our culture, blind faith, right? Everyone's heard of blind faith. Now, to be precise here, to believe something that's unreal is no more harmful to our knowledge than not believing something that is real. For example, let's say you're in a burning house and a fireman comes, but you don't believe. You doubt that fireman really came to save you. You think it's obviously someone from the outer rings of Saturn that's come to body snatch me. And so the fireman tells you, no, I'm really coming here to help you. So if you don't believe what is true, it can cost you your life. I mean, after all, let's say someone who's, having serious mental problems and the doctor says, hey, look, this is who you are. You're so-and-so, you live here, and the person doesn't believe it. So not believing what is true, doubting what is true, is just as serious as believing what's not true. And therefore, if our civilization was fair, we would have two well-known expressions, blind faith, blind doubt. But in fact, we do not have the term blind doubt. Why? Because people are stupid. I mean, just to get to the point very quickly. So here's another point. If you affirm or deny a proposition, the affirmation and I'll explain what this means. The affirmation or the denial of a proposition requires the same knowledge. For example, if I say that 2 and 2 are 4, so I'm a math teacher, and I say 2 and 2 are 4, or if I say 2 and 2 are not 5, I cannot say that 2 and 2 are not 5 unless I know that 2 and 2 are 4. So, like a teacher, if you mark, let's say you're giving a spelling test. If you mark a word right or wrong, it requires exactly the same knowledge. You cannot mark a word right or wrong unless you know the correct spelling. You cannot say that an equation, such as 2 and 2 equals 4, you can't say an equation is right or wrong unless you know the right answer. So therefore, to give an example from Greek mythology, to say that Zeus is the god of rain, or to say Zeus is not the god of rain, are both religious statements. It's just like if I say 2 and 2 are not 5, that's a math claim. If I sell good is not spelled G-U-D, that's a spelling claim. If I say that Zeus is not the god of rain, that's a religious claim. And so the simple question, so in other words, you can preach religion in public universities as long as you preach negatively. But to say there's no God is just as much a religious claim as to say there is a God. So let's say, for example, that you get a PhD in Greek mythology or, classics. There's nothing about that can tell you whether Zeus is a god of rain or not. Or they'll say something really pathetic, like, yes, the ancient Greeks saw the thunder and lightning, they were frightened, they wanted to feel some protection from thunder and lightning and rain, so they imagined there was a god out there that controlled these things. I have a simple question to them. How do you know that? You weren't there. How do you know that that's what they thought? And yet every history of Western philosophy book probably ever written in the last several hundred years says that. But how do they know? What if they actually were in touch with Zeus? So our modern civilization is not real bright. And people don't understand philosophy, don't understand logic, and they say crazy things. So, but I found by pointing that out, it doesn't make people say, okay, if that's the case, then I'll chant Hare Krishna. It's, at least it helps people to be objective. We don't want people to be subjective. We're not trying to manipulate them. We're trying to get them to be reasonable. Because if someone is like terrified of having a religious experience, like, I'm going to lose my mind, I'm going to lose my, God knows what's going to happen to me, they may never chant. And so it's simply a question of leveling the playing field, creating a reasonable, objective context in which the person knows it's safe to try this. Yes.
That leaving of Saddam, when you mentioned that, it made me think, at that time it was really sad. And what if it were because, he came from our time, like.
Oh, yes. He was older than me, but I'm very young.
Nothing was accepted very much in those days, He was in a black body. It was hard to be in a black body in those days. But we're in a progressive world now.
Yeah.
If he had come today, for instance, black people are much more accepted. Races are much more accepted. Interracial marriages, there's marriage freedom, mixed couples. We're accepted. Do you feel we've made a lot of progress in that? So people coming now into our movement, they don't seem to have that baggage that you and I had when we were born in the.
We were certainly born in a different world.
I mean, now it's to dislike somebody because of their color or their sexual preference or the clothes they wear is like trailer park, isn't it? It's somebody.
No offense to anyone here that lives in a trailer park.
We like them too.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Or redneck, even if there are no rednecks.
Actually, I remember when I was at Harvard, I read an article where they studied belief in reincarnation in America, and the demographic, the group in America that had the highest belief in reincarnation was Southern blacks.
Really?
Yeah.
But I was thinking it would have been easier. It seems to be easier on the people coming into our movement now. It seems like we have less fun.
Well, we actually were adults now. It's. I mean, I call the early days of the movement. I call it Vedic Lord of the Flies. You know, the public was kind of.
It's kind of like the Our Game comedy.
I mean, we were young. I mean, studies of elephant families, gorillas, all kinds of advanced mammals show that when a community of advanced mammals is deprived of their elders, they tend to engage in behavior that's irrational, self-destructive, antisocial. And so, we were all kids. There was. I mean, when I joined the movement, the entire international Hare Krishna movement, there was one mature adult, and that was Prabhupada. And so he had to travel all around the world, and there's only so much you can do. The devil made me do it. So, any other questions? If not, let me thank you all for your attention, and we'll have prashadam now. Hare Krishna.
Maharaj is going to be giving a Sunday lecture tomorrow, and also he'll be doing a Monday night program at the temple at 6 o'clock.
Haribol.
Oh, Monday night, 6 o'clock.
Can you promise?
Yes. Thank you all.
So for the transition.